In this video, I'm going to show you how to use half circle templates to make quilt blocks. I'm using these for my understory quilt, but you can use this technique with other half circle templates as well. Just to keep everyone on the same page as we're getting started, it's important to notice the names for each of these pieces. The outside edge we're going to call the crust, just like a pie, and the inside circle we're going to call the filling. It's a little bit silly, but it's an easy way to keep everybody on track. So we'll start by laying out our cut strip of fabric. You can see I've already cut a half circle out of this, and so I'm going to flip the template and cut around that curved edge. We'll do this all the way down the strip, just to reduce any fabric waste. So start by lining up the bottom of your template with the straight edge of your strip. Just a little note on tools here as I get started. Don't worry, we'll cut some more. I like to use a 28mm rotary cutter. I typically prefer the Martelli brand. Here I'm using Fiskars, which works fine, but Martelli just is a little bit easier to use personally. So I'm going to flip this template every time I use it to reduce waste and line it up with the straight edge on my cut strip. Then I'll use that rotary cutter to get a nice cut around the curved edge. Now that we have our half circle cut out, I will show you how to cut the crust. So this strip is a bit wider. Again, to reduce waste, we're going to flip the template, and you're going to start by lining up that long straight edge with the long straight edge of your strip. So we're going to try our best to cut around the circle rather than cutting all the way through the strip so that we can kind of interlock these pieces and then use the fabric a little more wisely. So not too shabby. I keep missing this corner for some reason. So now we'll take that template and interlock like that and work our way down the strip. So now we can start working on the piecing for this. I like to glue baste rather than pin. So to start that, I'm going to fold both pieces in half and finger press to get a nice crisp line that shows me where center is. So now that we have both centers marked, I'm going to want to match these edges, and it can get a little confusing. So lay it out how it's going to look, flip right sides together, and then using Elmer's glue, I'm just going to dab a little bit right on the edge. And this is just Elmer's Disappearing Purple. So I'm going to press right there on the center to make sure everything's lined up. And then I'll flip back and do a little bit more glue along the edge of this half of the circle. And I'm going to take my time and match the raw edge of my crust to the raw edge of my filling. Being careful to not stretch your fabric as you do this, you just want it to be laying and matching the raw edges. I'm going to repeat this on the other side. So I'm just taking my time, matching and pressing as I go. And if your edge didn't stick perfectly, you probably just need a new tube of glue. It seems like the older it gets, the less it sticks. So just make sure everything stays lined up, and you should have lots of wrinkling because when we stitch around that edge, we're going to flip out and everything will be nice and flat for you. Now we're going to take this over to our sewing machine, and as we get started, the only really important thing here is this 1/4 inch seam. And it seems intimidating, but all you're doing is paying attention to your 1/4 inch guide and where your fabric's landing on it. So I like to start a little bit back so we don't have any bunching, and then all I'm doing is guiding that fabric through, making sure there's no huge bunches going under the needle, and following my 1/4 inch seam guide. Now if you see a bunch coming up, you can raise that presser foot as long as your needle's down and kind of flatten it out and keep moving on. And if it doesn't look like the fold's gonna hit under the needle, then you don't need to worry about it. So this one looks like it'll land under the needle, so I'm just gonna kind of even it out over the course of that curve. So we're just really taking our time on these. It's a little bit more picky than your quarter circle templates, and you just need to take your time and follow that guide. That's all we're doing here. And if my fingers are a little too close to the needle for you, grab a stiletto or something else to help keep your fabric in place. And these will get faster as you work with them more, but to start, we take it nice and slow. So here is my piece. It looks scary, but once you open it, it lines up and is nice and flat. Now we are ready to press this, and I always like to start by pressing the back side first. So we just want to be careful with this block especially not to pull or warp the fabric as we're working. It's really easy to do on this large of a piece. So we're just going to press the seams towards the filling so that they know which way to go when we flip it over, keeping in mind that the seams go towards the filling. So now we're going to press from the top, and I'm really focusing on getting the seam nice and flat. I'm really not worried about the block itself yet. That should work out pretty well here once those guys lay flat. There's a lot of fabric to manage, so that is our main goal. So careful not to stretch anything. It's easy to stretch that bottom. I don't know why, but just try and keep things nice and flat as you work. If you feel like things aren't getting flat, you can use starch or a starch alternative like flatter. Give it a little spray, let it sit for a second, and then press again. So we have our block now, and we can head over to the cutting board to give it its final trim. So as we start with cutting our piece, we want to cut the two long edges first, and then we'll come back in and cut the short sides. So first thing is our top edge here, and our goal is to make sure that there is a 1/4 inch of background fabric above our half circle. While I'm here, I want to make sure that I'm going to have enough width to get the full block size that I need that's written in the pattern. But that looks good here, and I've still got my 1/4 inch, so we should be all set to trim. So one last look at things, and we'll trim that edge. Next, we're going to trim the bottom. So this part's a little easier. We now have a straight edge, and we know we want this block to be 3 inches tall. So we're going to line up that 3-inch mark along the straight edge that we just created and trim off those messy bottom corners. So now we can start trimming the sides. We have 2 nice straight pieces, the top and the bottom, and we're going to use those as our guides as we cut the sides. Just like the top, we want to make sure we have enough room for the block, so this one is 5.5. And we also want to make sure that we have that 1/4 inch of crust on either side of the filling. So there's a little bit of eyeballing here. You want to make sure everything's right before you cut, but it looks like we have our 2 1/4 inch pieces on either side of the half circle, and it's going to be about 5.5 inches wide once we trim. So I'm going to just double check myself, make sure that my top and bottom lines are following the edges of my ruler. Double check my 5.5 inch width, and that those 1/4 inches are on either side, and it all looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and trim, and then this last edge should be fine because I did all that looking now, and I should be able to just trim for a 5.5 inch wide block. Always good to double check yourself, but it looks good here. So we have our 1/4 inch on all 3 sides here, and then I'm going to make that final cut, unless I slip. There we go. So here is your finished half circle block. To find more tutorials, templates, patterns, or to learn more about my understory quilt, visit me at rachelrossi.design/understory.